The rain had started just as she stepped out of the cab, a soft drizzle that turned into a steady pour, soaking through her thin coat. Claire Dawson stood outside the restaurant, her hands trembling as she adjusted her purse strap and forced herself to take a deep breath. It wasn't just another evening. It was her first date in 3 years, her first attempt to let someone in since life had cruelly ripped her husband away. She had promised herself she'd move on someday. Tonight was supposed to be that day. But as she looked at her reflection in the glass door, wet hair, tired eyes, a faint nervous smile, she wondered if she was fooling herself. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us keep sharing. Stories that touch the heart. Inside the cozy little Italian restaurant, the air smelled of rosemary and wine, soft jazz playing under the low hum of conversations. Claire spotted the man from the dating app. Daniel Moore, early 40s. Dark hair with hints of gray, sitting alone at a corner table, looking up from his phone as she entered. He smiled politely, stood up, and pulled out a chair for her. His manner was calm, courteous, almost too perfect. She wanted to believe this was a good sign. But as the minutes passed, the warmth faded. Their small talk stumbled like a car running out of gas. He asked polite questions, but his eyes kept drifting toward the door, or the clock, or the waiter's tray. Claire tried her best to keep the conversation alive, telling stories about her job at the community library, her love for baking with her daughter, and her small garden. But Daniel's polite smiles didn't reach his eyes. He seemed distant, distracted. And then, the mistake. When she mentioned her daughter, "My little girl Lily, she's 8 now." Daniel's expression froze. His shoulders stiffened, and the polite smile vanished completely. He leaned back, cleared his throat, and said softly, "You didn't mention you had a kid." Claire blinked. "Oh, I thought I did on my profile." He shook his head, a faint hint of irritation creeping into his voice. "No, you said you liked kids, not that you had one." The words sliced through her composure like glass. She tried to laugh it off, saying maybe she had worded it badly, but the air had already shifted. The dinner that followed was painfully awkward. Every minute stretched like an hour. Daniel kept glancing toward the exit, barely responding as she tried to speak. The waiter came and went, unnoticed. Finally, after an uncomfortable silence, Daniel sighed and said, "Look, Claire, you seem nice, really. But I'm not sure I'm ready to date someone who already has a family." That single sentence crushed whatever hope she'd walked in with. She nodded numbly, forcing a weak smile as tears burned her eyes. She whispered that she understood, that it was okay, even though it wasn't. When the bill came, he paid, stood up, and said, "Take care, Claire," before walking out. She sat there, frozen, the candle between them flickering weakly in the draft. Outside, the rain fell harder, blurring the city lights. She could have left then, should have, but she didn't. She sat for a while, staring at the empty chair across from her, trying to gather her pride and pieces of her heart. By the time she stepped out, the rain had soaked through her coat again. She called a cab, but none came. Finally, she started walking, each step heavier than the last. The sound of the rain hid her tears. She had never felt more alone. When she reached home, she found Lily still awake, sitting by the window with a blanket around her shoulders. The little girl's eyes lit up when she saw her mother, but the joy faded as she noticed Claire's trembling hands and swollen eyes. "Mommy?" she asked softly. "Didn't he like you?" Claire forced a smile, knelt beside her, and hugged her tightly. "He was nice, sweetheart. Just not the right one." Lily's small arms wrapped around her mother's neck, her voice barely a whisper. "That's okay. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be the right one." That night, when Claire lay awake in bed, her daughter's words echoed in her heart. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be. Maybe life wasn't done teaching her yet. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, and Claire decided to let it go. She made pancakes, laughed with Lily, and told herself that maybe love just wasn't for her anymore. Her heart had been broken once. It could survive being disappointed again. But fate had other plans. 3 days later, while Claire was helping out at the library's weekend event, a children's reading circle, she noticed a familiar face at the door. Daniel. He stood there awkwardly, holding a small box of books in his hands. His hair was messy, and there was an almost boyish nervousness in his expression. "Hi," he said softly, stepping closer. "I didn't expect to see you here." Claire's heart gave a small, confused flutter. "I volunteer here every Saturday," she replied. Daniel nodded, his gaze shifting to the group of children on the floor, where Lily was sitting cross-legged, reading aloud with a bright smile. He looked back at Claire, guilt flickering across his eyes. "That's your daughter?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, that's Lily." Daniel took a deep breath. "She's amazing." Something in his tone made Claire pause. He looked tired, remorseful. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "I owe you an apology. I was rude that night. The truth is, I didn't know how to handle it. I was married once too. My wife left 3 years ago. No explanation. I thought I had moved on. But when you mentioned your daughter, it just brought up everything I'd lost. I panicked. I shouldn't have walked out." For a long moment, Claire said nothing. The sound of children laughing filled the air. She looked at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and saw not arrogance but regret. "People get scared," she said softly. "It's human." He smiled faintly. "Still, I'd like a chance to make it right. Maybe coffee? No blind dates, no expectations. Just coffee." She hesitated. Then Lily's voice broke through the silence. "Mommy!" "Look, Mr. Daniel brought books." Both adults turned as Lily waved one of the books he'd brought, grinning. "He's nice," she said cheerfully. "Can he stay and read with us?" Daniel chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. Claire couldn't help but smile. That day, Daniel stayed. He read to the children, helped pack up afterward, and even joined them for ice cream afterward. For the first time, Claire saw a different side of him. Not the polished man from the restaurant, but a gentle, wounded soul trying to reconnect with life. Weeks passed. They started seeing each other again. Slowly, carefully. Coffee turned into walks in the park, laughter over pizza nights, and movie evenings where Lily always insisted Daniel sit next to her. Every time Claire saw him helping her daughter with homework or laughing at her silly jokes, her heart softened a little more. She realized that sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It grows quietly, like sunlight through clouds. But one evening, as they sat on a bench watching the sunset, Daniel turned serious. "Claire," he said softly, "I need to be honest. I still have fears. I don't want to fail someone again, and I don't want to hurt you or Lily." Claire reached out, taking his hand. "Then don't," she said simply. "We don't need promises. Just honesty." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. From that moment, they stopped pretending to be perfect. They talked about their grief, their guilt, their mistakes. And somehow, through all the brokenness, something real began to form. Months later, on a cold December evening, Daniel invited them both to dinner at the same Italian restaurant where they had first met. This time, there was no awkward silence, no tension. The waiter recognized them and smiled. Daniel laughed when Claire teased him about his first impression. As the night drew to a close, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not a ring, but a silver pendant shaped like a heart, with 2 tiny initials engraved, C and L. He handed it to Lily. "This is for you," he said softly, "because you're the one who made me stay." The little girl tilted her head, confused. "But you left that night." Daniel smiled gently. "I did. But your mom's kindness and your smile brought me back." Lily threw her arms around him and whispered the words that melted every heart at that table. "Thank you for not leaving." Tears welled in Claire's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt peace. Not because life had given her everything she wanted, but because it had given her a reason to believe again. Daniel looked at her with quiet affection. "I think we both found what we were missing," he said softly. And as they walked out together into the cool night, hand in hand, Claire realized that sometimes the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful stories. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us spread more stories about love, healing, and second chances. Special request. Comment below. I believe in second chances. If you think love deserves another try, no matter how many times life breaks you,